The next conversation is around the topic creative freedom, OTT crafting bolder narratives. We would like to welcome on screen our moderator, Munish Puri, founder and CEO, Rainwalk Studios, a division of Rainshine Entertainment. Pooja Radhajaksha, content head, Eros Now. Shaurya Mohanty, chief operating officer, Epic On. Gunjan Arya, CEO, Only Much Louder. Isaac M. John, Director, Digital Business and Partnerships, Discovery India. Binda Day, Head of Marketing, Red Chillies Entertainment. And Abhimanyu Singh, producer and founder of Contillo Pictures. I believe Abhimanyu sir is yet to join us, but we'll move on with the panel.
I'm here.
Oh, all right. Good to see you, sir. Sorry. I'll leave the stage to you then.
Thanks, Varun. Thank you so much. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to SCREENXX 2020, Creative Freedom, OTT Crafting Bolder Narratives. That's the topic today. We at Rainshine Entertainment are glad to be here. Welcome all the panelists. We have some really sharp minds here. Just to give a prelude to the topic, on September 4th this year, the Digital Entertainment Committee of the Internet and Mobile Association of India, through its chair, Tarun Katyal, who just spoke, released the third code of self-regulation for online curated content providers. They're also referred to as OCCP. This was in consultation with a number of streaming companies, and it aimed to create a universal code, a regulation code for OCCPs. A total of 15 streaming networks, all the top networks, signed up, which included Disney plus Hotstar, Amazon Prime, Netflix, Eros Now, Z5, Discovery Plus, MX Player, and others. On the 14th of September, Sony Live and Lionsgate also joined the self-regulation code. There were two key differences between the second code and the third code, which was that the 9-member Digital Content Complaints Council was to be replaced with a 3-member advisory council. And there was an elimination of the stringent prohibitive content list, in the third code. On September 22nd, we've reliably learned through a press report that the INB ministry in India had expressed concerns even on the third proposed code. And they had 3 points that they made. The first was that the self-regulatory mechanism lacked independent third-party monitoring. It did not have a well-defined code of ethics, and it did not clearly spell out the prohibitive content list. Now, with this background as information, I'm going to bring in each of the panelists. Given that there's been a tenfold growth in online content over the recent years, and with a view to allow streaming platforms and content producers to express their views around self-regulation, we have Adgully, who's brought together a bunch of people, as we've said. So without further ado, let's actually get into the first panelist here who I'd like to sort of engage with, which is Pooja of Eros Now. She heads content for Eros Now and has been someone who's had deep digital experience. So Pooja, tell us a bit about your views on the topic, as well as can you give us some live examples of content that you've produced that has gone through the self-regulation route, as well as, how was that journey?
So hi everyone. We've just recently launched Flesh, and we've also launched a film, Halahal. So specifically on this topic and on self-regulation, I think we believe that there are some, like for example, the show was based on human trafficking and sex trafficking, and that's something which is like a social crime. And we had to tell the story the way it was. But of course, we were responsible about it. And, we exercised self-restraint and regulation in how we wanted to tell the story. But because of the theme of the show, the way it was, it came across, we had to put it out in a particular way. so as to even raise awareness on the issue, because most people are not even aware, it's not even talked about. That's human trafficking is so prevalent in our country. So in that sense, what we put out on the show was keeping the self-regulation and with a lot of responsibility in mind. And the way we put it out was really about talking about the issue at hand at large.
And did you face any, just out of curiosity, did you face any backlash, or was there any engagement that happened post the the series release on Eros Now?
No, actually, we were very appreciated. I think we didn't get any backlash, so to speak. People appreciated, and it made them aware. We had a lot of positive sentiment around the show, and people spoke about it well. And it's also people are so vulnerable, and the human trafficking is so prevalent that seeing it right up front, I think we got a lot of positive feedback on the show.
Okay, that's great to know. And
so in that sense,
Halahal also the same. Halahal also, you've had the same sort of.
Yes, Halahal also was based on a medical scam, education scam. It was a digital film that was based on the education scam, and of course that was prevalent. It was loosely based on one of the scams that happened a few years back, and we picked up that movie because we wanted to talk about what's really happening around us. At the same time, entertain people, tell them that this is what has happened, and this is how you can, you can fight it as well. So I think we also showed the other side of the stories in both the cases, whether it was Flesh or even Halahal, as to how the cops and the good people and the, really fight it and risk their lives to sort of combat this evil. So in that sense, it was the good versus evil, but the fact remains that all of this is happening around us, and we rather put it out and talk about it than hide it under the carpet.
No, that's really interesting, and I think these are stories that need to be told. So that's great to see you do that. Just going from you, Pooja, onto Abhimanyu Singh of Contelo Pictures, who's been sort of a pioneer in the M&E industry. Abhimanyu, you did a show on Z5 called State of Siege, which was on 26/11 and was adapted from Sandeep's book, The Black Tornado. And you've also done a lot of Mytho content. Do you feel, having been in the industry for a very long time, have you seen a significant change with the freedom that OTT players have got? And do you cherish that freedom currently? And your views on the self-regulation side too would be great. We can't hear. I think you're on mute. Abhimanyu, are you on mute? Yeah.
Thank you so much, Munish, for the lovely introduction. I believe that television per se in India has been very well self-regulated. And this is for a number of years when, we moved from making cinema to, telling a lot of stories on television. Self-regulation was very well put together by IBF as well as the government. And it's the way forward. There are many reasons for this. The largest one being the fact that we need to be able to create a certain amount of content that is put out there at a certain speed. And that's not possible if you get into full-time regulation, apart from the fact that, freedom of speech is the foundation of any democracy. And I think, when we went about making State of Siege, there were, if we wanted to tell the story the way, it played out, there were a lot of faults within the Indian system that needed to be highlighted to ensure that something like this doesn't happen again. Yeah. Some of these would have not been possible if these were regulated very strongly by the government. And I think this is where the digital space, the digital storytelling space gives a great platform to storytellers across the length and breadth of the world. The very fact that you can tell stories the way you want to tell them and leave it to the viewer's choice to accept it or reject it or, there being, parental guidance to ensure that, certain adult content is not watched by children. These are all, technology, tectonic shifts that have already happened. And I think it is essential to, as storytellers, for us to be empowered rather than us being, closely monitored and regulated, because that, according to me, would really compromise our storytelling capabilities. And I think that becomes the genesis of this whole debate, that how do you regulate content where, as we move forward, stories are becoming bolder and stories are becoming more truthful to the way they should be told.
Abhimanyu, so recently there's been a bit of debate on the defense side that because of a recent release on Netflix, there has been some concern, and there is word going around that we will need approvals from the government for any defense-related shows. I mean, I guess it's still being debated. Do you have any views on this?
See, I think if we go into that kind of approval system, it's going to be extremely difficult for content creators to create content. We've done a couple of shows on defense, and we've not had any issues, because what we've ensured is we've taken the experts on board. So when we did State of Siege...
So authenticity is what you've relied upon, and deep.
No. Also, these are very sensitive subjects. You need to create them with sensibilities and sensitivities. And I think what we did with the State of Siege, or whether it was, Ikki Sarfarosh, which was on the Battle of Saragri, we got the industry experts, which were the guys from the military. And, we had Colonel Sandeep Sen, who was actually in charge of the Khabad operation in the Mumbai 26/11 attack. And he was there to walk us through. Obviously, we had Sandeep's book. Sandeep Unnithan, who had actually done in-depth, the research on the 26/11 attack. Yeah. But there were a lot of, things that needed to be highlighted, which were the shortcomings of our government, which were the shortcomings of, we were fighting with 303s. These are rifles that were fought, in the 19th century by the Indian British forces. This is what we were fighting in 2008 with guys who were coming with AK-47. So, these things, if as storytellers, we're not able to highlight and we're not able to showcase the fact that these things need to change. And this is just one aspect of it. The other aspect is obviously, from a military perspective, you have to be sensitive, because these guys, they work selflessly in the interest of the nation, and obviously showcasing them in an incorrect light is not right, and therefore you need experts. So I think a broad framework like we have in broadcasting, which has been put in place, which is then followed by content creators and self-regulators, I think the way forward.
Great, thanks, Abhimanyu. That's quite insightful. Just moving on to Isaac, John, who's with Discovery India and has done some amazing work within the digital field. You have an app that you've sort of launched. You have something called Kids Safe. You've got something called Universal Viewing, and you've actually adopted global best techniques in order to ensure that the audience that sort of views a particular piece of content can actually view it and is allowed and permitted to. You want to speak a bit about that, as well as a few shows that you've actually done, which have had any self-regulation abidement to them. You've done a lot of defense shows too. So yeah,
sure. Thank you, Manish. So when we started looking at this problem even before the self-regulation code had come in, and part of it was primarily built of the fact that Discovery's presence in India has always been built on the back of families, parents trusting the word discovery, and I think one of the very early consumer insights we had was that no parent should feel like uncomfortable giving their phone to like a kid. So if you look at our launch, slate, it did not have any of the shows, that were even minutely sort of on the gray side, right? But I think as the self-regulation, ethos took place within IMAI, and I think the IME has done a fabulous job in putting together something which is now serving as a common code. What we did is we basically did a fast follow release to our product, and our approach was basically how can we just sort of add a layer to the product which respects that code. So we have something called like an all access mode, and unlike any other OTT platform today, which if you open, you basically will just get to switch between profiles, right? And our default landing, irrespective of whatever your last viewing thing was, will always be kid safe. So if you really want to go to, let's say, like a all access mode, you actually have to go to the left hand side of the menu, voluntarily go there, click there, set your pin, couple of steps. Not a little, like, we have made it difficult for people to actually access that. It's not as easy as just switching profiles and getting access. So that was our approach to getting that. On the shows, I can recall a few, like there is Love Island Australia, there is shows like Undressed, there is shows like Naked and Afraid, and all of them are actually behind this all access platform. So we sort of built on the consumer trust, layered it with like a fast follow on product, and now and I think the regulation now additionally states that you also need to call out 16 plus. So we will continue to actually have content which is not behind the all access, but we will just call it out with like a 16 plus kind of a badge. So that's been our approach in sort of working with this.
Very interesting. Okay. Let's bring in a very sharp marketing mind through Binda. Binda, you've recently worked on a show called Class of '83, which just got released. It'd be great to understand from you what really happened there, and what did you do in order to ensure that self-regulation sort of was implemented.
Thanks, Manish. So firstly, at Red Chillies, we strongly believe any content we make is something that can be viewed by the whole family together. But sometimes, of course, as storytellers, we want the freedom to tell different kind of stories, show different point of views. So for Class of '83 particularly, what had happened, because the timing was such, the film was shot a while back, but the film released about a month back, end of August. There was this whole thing about police brutality going around. And unfortunately, the story, of course, was set in 1980s, and it showed a certain era where, what was happening in the country, and it was a fictional take on what was happening at that time. So kind of it got connected in social media more because the conversation picked up around it. But what our stance, and Netflix team did it very nicely actually, was to show the trailer in a certain way where it was not about, or subsequent communication also around it, that it's not about glorifying police brutality. It's actually showing what happened and the upside and the downside of it. It's showing a point of view. And after some initial reactions, I think it died down. Once people watched the content, they were pretty, they took it on their stride. So even in Red Chillies, during the time coming up, we are looking at different kind of stories to tell. Many times they are around very sensitive issues. So we have a moral obligation as a content producer, as a studio, to make content, and our content goes globally. So even we look at global standards in different markets, they have different kind of standards for content, especially going out to theater. So we look at how much is required to tell a story authentically. If you're telling a certain story, you have to show certain things in a certain way. Yeah. But every time, at the level of a producer, at the level of a writer, at the level of a director, and even actor, we have to take a conscious call of how much is required for making it authentic, and where is it where we are trying to just sensationalize a type of content.
Binda, that's an amazing point, because I think that's the onus on us as content producers, or creators, that is the natural fabric of the story requiring a certain scene to be included, and then, as all the panelists have said so far, and in fact, I want to quote Tarun. Maybe it's a good time to quote him, but he says, creative freedom, Tarun Katyal that is, creative freedom should be utilized to build a better society and a progressive mindset, while being mindful of the applicable laws and the sensitivities. I don't think you could say it any better, because if the natural fabric of the story, as Abhimanyu was saying, certain things need to be told, or in Pooja's case, the kind of stuff that she's done, which is critical to be told. If it's requiring it, it should happen. Just moving on to, Shaurya, yourself, who's at Epicon, and again, you've got very diversified content. You're doing a whole host of things. Why don't you tell us a bit about what you feel about this issue, and if you have any examples of what you did if and when you faced, any backlash or any intervention?
Yeah. Thanks, Manish, for the intro. I think Epicon as an OTT platform has emanated from the broadcasting, the product which is the Epic TV, and as a network, our genesis is from the broadcasting. So definitely the censorship and MIB SOPs are applicable anyway on the linear TV. So therefore, on the OTT itself, we have taken a lot of caution in terms of what kind of content should go, and keeping the natural fabric of the content and the basic, how the user is going to sort of accept the content. We take both the things into account. And for the original also, we spent a lot of time in the writer's room in developing and doing a research. So we created 2 seasons of Regiment Diaries, which is based on army on various regiments. So around 8 regiments have been there, and these are like 30-minute webisodes, and they have been taken very nicely by our audience, saying that okay, there are a lot of intricacies in army, and we are not aware of that. So that was taken with a lot of, it was accepted with a lot of gusto and pride. So we spent a lot of time in terms of developing a story, and when we develop a story with the filmmakers and writers, we also take into account the sensitivities of the culture. Currently, OTT, not only in India, it goes global, but we also have to decide what is the Lakshman Rekha that we need to sort of respect, and that keeps us within the S&P SOPs, and as well as the lot amount of self-regulation that we do at our end. So right from the production
That's
to the
amazing.
uploading on the.
Yeah, that's an amazing point. So just on the defense shows that you did you have to go back and seek permission, or did you actually sort of again just get on experts like Abhimanyu did?
Yes. So we basically follow a very sequential process, a very thorough process of going by the permissions to onboarding a subject matter expert, and then getting into the writer's room and then developing the story. So it took some time, but yes, we went the right way, and then we got into the veracity of each of the regiments that we are showcasing, and we took utmost amount of care in terms of keeping everybody in the fold. So be it the sensitivities of the defense system, be it the sensitivities of our civilians, and as well as the people who are sort of viewing the content. So we took as a 360-degree approach, and then obviously the show did really well, and it's still streaming in different corners of the globe. I think this is a very good learning, and some of the great people were involved in terms of developing that. So that's one part. The second part is that while we have been factual and non-fiction in most of our content, we are also sort of expanding to fiction content. But yes, again, in fiction content, we take utmost care in terms of what kind of storytelling we should adopt, and whether it is biographies, or whether it is a war movie, or it's a drama, or a rom-com. We sort of define our SOPs, what is do's and what is don'ts. And right from the word go of streaming, we imbibe all of this naturally.
Sure,
So whether
that's great. I mean, I think that's really good to hear. Just because of the lack of time, I'm sorry to intervene, but basically we have about 10 minutes left. I want to just get into into Gunjan's mind, because she's the CEO of OML, and she's been doing some amazing stuff. She's worked with a bunch of creators. It'd be great to understand from you, Gunjan, what do you really feel? And sure, we're going to come back to you for you to finish your point if you had any, but I just want to give all the panelists a chance, because we're a larger panel than the normal panel. So excuse me for intervening. My apologies. Go ahead, Gunjan.
Thanks, Manish. Sorry about that, Shaurya. So we're obviously going to speak from the side of the creator. There's never been a better time. We're able to tell the stories, and very narrowly focused niche stories that we wouldn't have opportunities to tell if the OTT boom hadn't happened. And this is purely on the back of the fact that there aren't the same kind of box office pressures or your primetime television viewing. And that's actually precisely for the same reason I believe that the rules that apply to broadcast media can't necessarily apply to OTT, which is almost narrowcast media, because you're literally allowing audiences to pick what they want to watch. And to Isaac's point, users are being able to define what they're okay with and what they're not okay with. which is what sort of widens the scope for us as storytellers. All censorship at the end of the day has to be, it's a form of negotiation. And that's what every creative decision is as well. When you're deciding to tell the stories that you are and the scenes that you're picking. So what Binda mentioned, the purpose and the value that creative brings is that we get a chance to explore values and mores. And we want the opportunity to do that, but obviously within the guardrails of what we believe needs to be upheld as a society. There's always going to be two aspects to censorship, or I guess consequences. One is your, very derivative sort of consequence, which is when like a Rang De Basanti comes out, sorry, not my personal experience, but when Rang De Basanti came out and there was all the protests and the conversation around, hey, are our armed forces getting the support that they need? Because the film highlighted those issues. That is obviously a derivative consequence. And that's the kind of consequences we want, because that's what creative can do. It can expand the narrative and expand conversations that aren't happening right now.
So you feel essentially this is a great time for content creators. And just, Gunjan, I want to quote Shekhar Kapoor, of Bandit Queen and prolific filmmaker, with what he said, and it's along the lines of what you're saying. But he believes today creators have avenues to go even beyond streaming platforms, and he also believes that creators should actually have the mind space to be able to showcase their work with minimal interference from a streaming platform. So just to summarize what you're saying, I think the point is that there hasn't been a better time than this for creators. If we can open it for Q&A, that'd be great. Before we do a wrap up, Bijoya.
Absolutely, you can take 5 minutes. Yes.
So is there any Q&A for us, or should we just continue the panel discussion and sort of call it out?
No, there are two questions. One question by an anonymous attendee is, there is a new set of audience that has emerged in the last year. How will one plan to encourage audience engagement with these new breeds with bold creatives? But I am not aware of what new breed of audience is there. So it's a little vague in that sense.
Okay, and what's the second question?
The next question is, while bold narratives look exciting, but how do we ensure that we have some self-regulation practices so no one crosses the lines?
Right. Okay. Does anyone want to take that? Abhimanyu, you want to come in for the second one? Because I think the first one's vague, I agree. So we can address the second question. So how do you regulate? I mean, so I guess it's got to do with the audiences out there. I mean, how do you believe to create content there?
So I think it's all Munish. Firstly, different stories need different strokes for different folks. You can't have like a particular kind of guideline for all content. But you need a broad framework. And I agree with the fact that there needs to be some kind of a broad framework. Otherwise, there will be some players that will be irresponsible to tell certain stories the way they shouldn't be told. However, I think that, this is a time where there are, on television, we couldn't tell many of the stories. And now the digital space gives us that opportunity to do that. And the way, if a certain story requires a certain narrative or a certain editorial take, then that must be the case. And that must be something that should be seen through. And no regulation should put a stop to that. However, we should be mindful, like there are, I read the white paper that has been proposed to the government. And there are certain, points which ensure that, you have to be sensitive towards, showing children in a certain way, or, sensitive towards, national agendas and, and nationality and the Indian, the Indian ethos, which is fine. I've done so much mythology, single problem in so many years. And that's what it is. I mean,
produced incredible content, Abhimanyu, you have. So, I mean, clearly, I think with what you're saying is actually true. I think Tarun Katyal and team have done an amazing job in putting together a white paper that is quite well positioned. I think the government, will also give it a hearing for sure. There have been initial reactions, but I think there will eventually, we at Rainshine believe there will be a level playing field even for OTT. no one's given preference completely over another platform. But with that said, the creative freedom will, hopefully exist. So, I think if we can conclude, unless someone had a point that they wanted to make, which I've not been able to cover, unfortunately due to a lack of time, I'm happy to have them speak about it, any of the panelists. Otherwise, I'm just going to wrap it up, for now.
I just wanted to add one thing, as content creators, we have to take the responsibility on the content we are putting out. And today, a little bit of taking a step back, smart writing, editing, sound designing, the way you picturize a shot, you can say so much without showing too much. And that's a conscious call, and working a little bit more harder, is so important for us. And we are all running from one project to another, but sometimes we just need to step back and do that bit.
Binda, I'm going to just talk about Patal Lok, which was spoken about by Tarun. And it's great that you bring that up because it's one of my favorite shows. But one of the things I did see in there, and we did have a discussion when we were planning this session, and you were part of it, that there was one particular scene which one could have done in a slightly different way, and still the impact would have been the same. I think it's a great way to maybe end this session. But I think, again, every creator will have their own way of storytelling, but it's been an amazing and insightful session. I'm sorry because of the lack of time, but great having all of you. And, on to our next, and let's create, incredible content going forward to entertain the world at large. Yeah, our time has come. Thank you. Thank you, Adgully.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.